As we begin this extended, deeply immersive 21-minute journey heading east on United States Route 422, settle deep into your seat and let the steady, vibrating rhythm of the highway take over. Look out through the windshield at the massive rolling landscape of Butler County opening up before us. You are riding along the high ridges of the Appalachian Plateau, a profoundly ancient piece of earth. The deep, heavy green forests and the sweeping, dramatic valleys you see just beyond the shoulders of the road were carved out over millions of years by the slow, grinding retreat of the Ice Age glaciers. But as we follow the sweeping curve of the highway, preparing to transition onto Pennsylvania Route 356 toward the Homemaker and Lindora exits, we are leaving the quiet, ancient natural history behind and descending directly into one of the most explosive, heavy, and consequential industrial basins in the history of the world. The valley we are about to enter did not just witness American history, it literally manufactured it. As we take the exit and transition our route, look out toward the horizon. You are moving into the gravitational pull of the city of Butler, descending into the massive, twisting valley of the Connoquenessing Creek. Today, the western Pennsylvania sky is clear. The sightlines are sharp and the hillsides are heavily forested, but to truly understand the ground we are driving over, you have to completely strip away the quiet, modern reality. At the turn of the 20th century, this valley was an absolute, terrifyingly loud, smoke-choked epicenter of heavy global industry. If you were looking out this window in 1910, the sky above you would be an unnatural, suffocating blanket of heavy black soot and swirling orange embers. You would feel the deep, rhythmic, violent pounding of massive drop forges vibrating right through the floorboards of the vehicle, and the air would permanently taste like sulfur, iron ore, and burning coal. We are moving through the outer edges of an area known as Lindora. Look closely at the older, tightly packed wooden and brick homes clinging to the hillsides. Lindora was not just a neighborhood. It was a massive, purpose-built company town designed from the ground up to feed the insatiable appetite of the Pullman Standard Car Manufacturing Company and the sprawling Armco steel plant. In the early 1900s, this exact patch of earth was the absolute largest manufacturer of steel railroad cars on the entire planet. If you look down toward the floor of the valley, you have to imagine the sheer, staggering scale of the rail infrastructure that once dominated this space. For anyone who appreciates the heavy, deafening power and the complex logistics of the American railroad, this valley was absolute hallowed ground. The massive, roaring factories were churning out thousands of heavy steel freight cars every single month. They built the massive, heavy-duty hopper cars that carried Appalachian coal, the flat cars that hauled heavy military armor, and the box cars that physically connected the expanding American empire. The rail yards here were a chaotic, endless maze of heavy steel tracks. Massive, steam-breathing switcher locomotives were constantly moving cuts of freshly built cars. You would hear the deafening metallic crash of heavy steel couplers slamming together, the screeching of iron wheels against the rails, and the deep, ground-shaking rumble of the Bessemer and Lake Erie Railroad hauling unbelievably massive trains of raw red iron ore straight into the blast furnaces. The entire valley was an endless, synchronized ballet of heavy industry and massive rail movement. But those roaring factories needed blood and muscle to run. The executives of Pullman Standard and Armco sent agents across the Atlantic Ocean, heavily recruiting strong, desperate men from the poorest regions of Eastern and Southern Europe. Thousands of young men from Ukraine, Russia, Poland, Slovakia, and Italy packed their entire lives into battered trunks and made the grueling journey across the ocean, taking the train straight into this smoky valley. Lindora became a massive, incredibly dense, wildly diverse mosaic of global immigrants. Because the mills ran 24 hours a day, the local boarding houses operated on a system called hot bedding. A man working the day shift would sleep in a bed at night, and the moment he got up to walk down the hill to the blast furnaces, a man coming off the agonizing night shift would immediately climb into that exact same, still warm bed. If you walked these streets a century ago, you would hear a dozen different languages blending with the deafening roar of the steel mills. These men worked brutally dangerous, 12-hour shifts in blistering, unimaginable heat, pouring molten steel and riveting heavy iron plates, just to send a few dollars back home or build a better life for their children right here in the shadow of the smokestacks. They built massive, beautiful, onion-domed Orthodox churches that still pierce the sky today, anchoring their communities in faith against the crushing weight of the industrial machine. As we merge onto Newcastle Road, sweeping deeper into the city limits, I want you to look at the massive, old brick industrial footprints that still occasionally break through the modern commercial sprawl. While Lindora built the massive train cars that conquered the continent, the road we're driving on right now holds a completely different, incredibly famous piece of mechanical history. You are driving directly through the undisputed original birthplace of the Jeep. In the summer of 1940, with the entire world plunging into the darkest, most terrifying days of the Second World War, the United States military realized they desperately needed a brand new, highly capable, lightweight four-wheel drive reconnaissance vehicle. They sent an impossible, almost insulting demand to 135 different automobile manufacturers, giving them just 49 days to design, build, and deliver a fully working prototype. Every massive, wealthy automotive giant in Detroit said it was completely impossible. But a small, struggling, practically bankrupt car company right here in Butler, known as the American Bantam Car Company, decided to take the massive gamble. They brought in a brilliant, eccentric freelance engineer named Karl Probst. Working out of a small, sweltering brick building not far from this exact road, chain-smoking cigars and running on pure adrenaline, Probst drafted the entire revolutionary design for the very first Jeep in just 2 days. The men of the Bantam factory worked around the clock, scrounging for parts, modifying heavy-duty axles, and desperately hammering raw sheet metal by hand. Against all mathematical, financial, and engineering odds, on September 23, 1940, they successfully drove the very first working prototype, known affectionately as the Blitz buggy, out of their Butler factory and drove it all the way to the military testing grounds in Camp Olabird, Maryland. The military was absolutely stunned by its capability. The Jeep that was conceived and birthed right here in Butler went on to literally win the Second World War, carrying Allied soldiers across the burning deserts of North Africa and up the bloody beaches of Normandy. But the story holds a massive, heavy heartbreak for the people of this city. The War Department decided that the small Bantam factory in Butler simply did not have the massive production capacity required for the global war effort. So they took the blueprints that were drafted right here on these streets and gave them massive, highly lucrative mass production contracts to Ford and Willys. Bantam was cast aside, left to build heavy cargo trailers instead. But the absolute, undeniable truth remains permanently embedded in the soil of this city. The most iconic, recognizable military vehicle in human history was conceived, designed, and first brought to life right here in Pennsylvania. Every summer, this city still shuts down its streets to host a massive, roaring festival, packing the roads with thousands of Jeeps, fiercely and proudly reclaiming their rightful place in global history. We are continuing eastward, transitioning smoothly onto State Highway 8 South, preparing to merge directly onto South Main Street right through the heart of historic downtown Butler. As we roll into the central grid, look at the towering, incredibly ornate architecture rising up on both sides of the glass. You are looking at massive, heavy stone bank buildings, intricate terracotta facades, and towering brick storefronts. Before the steel mills and the railroad cars completely took over, this city experienced an absolutely chaotic, wildly lucrative boom in the late 1800s. Just a few miles north of here, massive deposits of high-grade crude oil and natural gas were discovered, kicking off a frantic, incredibly wealthy era of wildcat drilling. The massive wealth generated by that black gold flowed directly down into this city. The oil barons and early industrialists built massive, opulent Victorian mansions along the hillsides, and they constructed this towering downtown grid to reflect their absolute, unapologetic financial power. Look at the massive, imposing structure of the Butler County Courthouse sitting prominently on the hill. It is a stunning, heavily detailed piece of high Victorian Gothic architecture, built with dark, heavy stone, complete with a massive clock tower that has quietly watched over the constant, violent economic transitions of this valley for over a century. Imagine this exact street in 1920. It would have been a chaotic symphony of early urban transit. Heavy electric streetcars or trolleys used to run right down the absolute center of Main Street. You would hear the metallic screech of the steel wheels grinding against the tracks and see the bright blue sparks raining down from the overhead electric lines as the trolleys hauled thousands of mill workers and shoppers back and forth across the city. As we slowly cruise down Main Street, leaving the historic downtown core and continuing south on State Highway 8, the landscape begins to shift once again. The dense, tightly packed urban brick of the city center slowly gives way to the wider, more functional commercial architecture of the mid-20th century. This specific highway, Route 8, holds an incredible piece of road history that completely defined the geography of this region. It is historically known as the William Flynn Highway. William Flynn was a massively powerful, highly connected political boss and construction magnate from Pittsburgh. He lobbied aggressively to have this exact road paved and modernized from rough dirt and mud into solid macadam and concrete in the early days of the automobile. Long before the massive federal interstates were blasted through the mountains, this twisting, undulating road was the primary roaring artery connecting the heavy industrial weight of Butler directly to the massive, sprawling steel empire of Pittsburgh to the south. If you were driving this exact stretch in the 1950s, this road would have been an absolute chaotic river of motion. It was packed bumper to bumper with massive, heavy-duty freight trucks hauling thousands of tons of stamped steel, heavy machinery, and raw materials between the two industrial giants. The shoulders of this highway were completely lined with the classic, neon-soaked infrastructure of the early American road trip. Because it took so much longer to travel between cities on these older, undivided routes, an entire microeconomy sprang up right along the asphalt. You would have seen dozens of brightly lit motor courts with their glowing vacancy signs buzzing in the night, classic chrome-plated diners serving hot coffee and heavy slices of pie to exhausted truck drivers at 3 in the morning, and massive, bustling service stations where attendants in crisp white uniforms pumped gas and checked the oil of massive chrome-finned station wagons. Today, as we push further south into the area known as Nixon and Penn Township, the chaotic, heavy industrial truck traffic has largely vanished, siphoned off by the modern interstates, replaced by the steady, functional rhythm of the modern commuter. Look out at the wide, sweeping Pennsylvania sky and the massive, ancient oak trees beginning to reclaim the edges of the road. We are trading the heavy brick and asphalt of the industrial city for the quiet, rolling green hills of the agricultural frontier. But do not let the heavy weight of that industrial history trick you into thinking that Butler is a city stuck in the past, or worse, a city that has given up. As we sit here at the edge of the township, let's take a long, deliberate look at what the current daily life in Butler, Pennsylvania actually looks and feels like right now today. If you were to point a lens at this city and try to capture its modern pulse, you would not just be framing shots of abandoned brick and rusting steel. You would be capturing a brilliant, highly strategic, and deeply stubborn modern renaissance. Look back toward the heart of the downtown grid we just drove through. For a long time, Main Street suffered the exact same quiet, boarded-up fate as hundreds of other Rust Belt towns when the massive shopping malls pulled everyone out to the suburbs. But today, if you walk down Main Street on a Friday evening, the energy is completely different. The city has executed a brilliant, grassroots rebranding of its own identity, taking the heavy blue-collar aesthetic of its past and marketing it to a brand new generation. Look at the historic brick storefronts. Today, those massive heavy doors open up into incredibly vibrant, modern businesses. You will see local craft breweries like Butler Brew Works and Reclamation Brewing packing their tap rooms to the absolute brim. They have kept the exposed brick, the heavy steel beams, and the raw industrial architecture, but they are serving incredibly complex modern craft beer to young professionals, healthcare workers, and families. The air down there smells like roasting gourmet coffee from local cafes, mixed with the rich, heavy scent of wood-fired pizza and modern culinary kitchens. It is a completely revitalized, highly walkable downtown ecosystem. The people here recognize that their gritty, authentic industrial history is a massive marketing asset, and they have leaned into it entirely, creating a cultural atmosphere that completely defies the national stereotype of a dying steel town. And yet, right alongside that modern, artisanal culture, the heavy, mechanical heartbeat of the valley is still relentlessly pumping. If you love the sheer vibrating kinetic energy of heavy transit, Butler is still an absolute paradise. The massive, sprawling rail yards down in the valley are not empty. Down by the Connoquenessing Creek, the Buffalo and Pittsburgh Railroad runs a highly active, constantly moving freight operation. If you set up down near the tracks on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, you can feel the earth physically shake before you even see the trains. You will hear the deep, deafening turbocharged roar of massive C-40 diesel locomotives idling in the yard, their heavy engines throttling up to drag thousands of tons of raw materials and finished steel out of the valley. For anyone who appreciates the complex, heavy logistics of modern rail fanning, the Butler yards offer an incredible, unobstructed look at the heavy freight industry still operating exactly where it has for over a century. The metallic screech of the wheels and the deep blast of the air horns echoing off the hillsides completely ground this modern city in its heavy industrial reality. That unique blending of the old world and the new world is everywhere you look in modern Butler. Take the local economy, for example. The massive Pullman Standard plant is gone, but the Cleveland Cliffs steel mill is still a massive, sprawling, highly active footprint in the valley, employing hundreds of people and specializing in high-grade electrical steel that is vital for the modern global power grid. But the true economic center of gravity has shifted heavily toward medicine and education. The massive Butler Memorial Hospital system sits high on the hill, serving as the largest employer in the entire county, bringing in thousands of highly skilled doctors, nurses, and medical technicians. Down the road, the sprawling, beautiful campus of Butler County Community College is constantly expanding, training the next generation of engineers, nurses, and business owners. The city has successfully transitioned from a purely blue-collar manufacturing hub into a highly diversified, modern economic engine. But to truly understand the current beating heart of this community, you have to look at how fiercely they protect and celebrate their own history today. Every single June, the quiet, functional streets of this city are completely taken over by one of the most spectacular, roaring automotive events in the entire country. The Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival is a massive, highly calculated economic driver that brings tens of thousands of people from all over the globe directly into Butler. Imagine looking down Main Street and seeing nothing but a solid, unbroken river of thousands of Jeeps, ranging from meticulously restored, olive-drab World War II military rigs to massive, highly modified, brightly colored modern rock crawlers. The entire city shuts down to celebrate the fact that this specific vehicle was born right here. It is an incredible, deafening weekend of off-road trails, massive street parties, and deep local pride. The festival is a masterclass in modern civic marketing, proving that by fiercely claiming their rightful place in history, a small Pennsylvania city can create a massive, highly profitable, and globally recognized modern brand. And the culture here is not just about heavy machinery and cold beer. If you look closely at the modern cultural footprint of Butler, you will find some absolutely staggering surprises. Tucked right into the downtown area is the Merredon Museum. From the outside, it looks like a beautiful, understated piece of local architecture, but inside it houses one of the most significant world-class collections of Asian art and German Meissen porcelain in the entire United States. It was gifted to the city by a local resident, Mary Phillips, and it provides an incredibly quiet, sophisticated, and deeply profound cultural experience right in the middle of the Rust Belt. It is a stunning visual contrast to the heavy steel mills just a few miles away. Right down the street sits the historic Penn Theater. For decades, this beautiful, classic, single-screen movie palace sat empty, its massive neon marquee completely dark, threatening to crumble into history like so many other old theaters across the country. But the people of Butler absolutely refused to let it die. A massive grassroots community effort has spent years raising funds, repairing the roof, and restoring the heavy plasterwork to bring that theater back to life as a modern, multi-use community arts center. When that neon sign finally lit up again, casting a warm, brilliant glow over Main Street, it was a profound, highly emotional symbol of a city that simply refuses to let its light go out. The current life in Butler is incredibly layered. It is a place where you can spend your morning watching massive heavy freight trains haul steel through the valley, spend your afternoon walking through a world-class museum of ancient Asian art, and spend your evening drinking a locally brewed IPA in a century-old brick building. The people who live here today are an incredible mix of fourth-generation steelworkers who stayed to keep the local fires burning, and young, modern professionals who are moving back to the valley because they want to live in a place with genuine, unapologetic character. They deal with the same modern struggles as the rest of the country, fighting against inflation, maintaining aging infrastructure, and navigating the complex realities of the 21st century. But they do it with a specific, ironclad Pennsylvania grit that is impossible to ignore. They shovel their neighbors' driveways during the brutal lake effect snowstorms, they pack the high school football stadiums on freezing Friday nights in October, and they fiercely support the small independent businesses that line their streets.